What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So yesterday, Nintendo made another studio acquisition. That's 3 different studios in about a year and a half. Theirs haven't been as big and splashy as Sony and Microsoft, but they have been very purposeful, and I would say yesterday's was no different. We'll go over that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about Sony's latest reward system that they've announced called PlayStation Stars that should give a bit more value to those different trophies you're unlocking. And we're also going to be talking about Assassin's Creed as we have some more insight into some more short-term plans for Ubisoft and the franchise. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button, helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're going to start today with the latest game trial for Nintendo Switch Online. We can see this over on Nintendo's website, where they say try the latest game trial, MLB The Show 22. Now, this will be live later on today, 10 a.m. Pacific. It will run until July 21st. And yeah, you can just download the game, try it out. 17 gigabytes, so you may need a micro SD card depending on how much storage you have available on your Switch internally. And if you do end up liking MLB The Show and you want to keep it after the trial ends, you'll be able to buy it for 50% off leading up until the end of the trial, basically. And MLB The Show is $60 now, so that'd be $30, which, to be honest, that isn't too surprising to see that kind of a discount when we're working through the baseball season currently. That would happen every time with MLB The Show. The majority of the sales would happen as the season was starting up. Like spring training, MLB The Show would be flying off the shelves, provided they got it out at a decent time. Sometimes it was like hit or miss if they would make it there for spring training. And then as the season wore on, discounts would start to come in for the game. But I think this is a good trial program for people who have been curious about MLB The Show, whether just trying the game out in general or even seeing how it runs on the Switch. So if you're curious, it'll be live later on today for the next week. Also, there has been one big criticism that's been thrown towards Final Fantasy XVI, and that comes down to the combat system not necessarily being like the traditional command-based, turn-based system. Now, this being much more action-oriented. Well, Yoshida did talk to Famitsu about this. It was translated by VGC. I'll leave a link to the sources below if you want to read through more of the points that were being made, but we'll start over here with VGC, where he says, I think I understand how interesting and immersive it can be, that commenting on the command and turn-based RPGs. Then he says, on the other hand, for the past decade or so, I've seen quite a number of opinions saying, I don't understand the attraction of selecting commands in video games. This opinion is only increasing, particularly with younger audiences who do not typically play RPGs. This is something I've mentioned before, because like, if you're a bit older, like I remember the days of the Super Nintendo and then the PS1 and then Final Fantasy VII breaks onto the scene, explodes in popularity. Very traditional JRPG where you're picking stuff in a menu and running through it that way. Things have changed, though, with the younger audience, as being mentioned here, that have come in and the PS4 was their first system, even PS3. We have seen a bit of a shift going more towards action-oriented combat, even in traditional Final Fantasy games. So with these games where they have to cast a very wide net and sell a ton of copies, they kind of have to play into that. So hearing that, understanding they've probably done a lot of research, it's not too shocking to see a Final Fantasy game that does relate more to Devil May Cry than something like Final Fantasy X even. But if, say, Team Asano's game like Octopath sells 1 million copies, they'll celebrate. If Final Fantasy 16 sells 1 million copies, there's a problem. So basically, I understand I'm just old. But I have worked to accept the idea of things really changing in front of me when it comes to games like Final Fantasy, and 16 I think looks really good, so I'm pretty excited for it to release next year. Oh, and we did get a sales update for Resident Evil 2 Remake, that in this post over on Twitter, from Capcom Dev 1 saying we did it, showing 10 million copies sold for RE2 Remake, which is great. That actually puts it number 3 on the platinum list for Capcom, just behind Resident Evil 7 and then Monster Hunter World. So obviously, expectations are super high for Resident Evil 4 Remake, as that's, I mean, let's face it, that's the most popular Resident Evil game across the board. So seeing RE2 Remake do this well, yes, it took 3.5 years, but 10 million copies sold is great for a Resident Evil game. And hey, it's an awesome title, and they just got its update for the current systems now with the PS5 and Xbox Series. So certainly well deserved. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Nintendo's latest studio acquisition. Again, that makes 3 in the last year and a half. They acquired Next Level Games, which is like their biggest acquisition since Monolith Soft, I guess. And then they did SRD, who were basically in the office of Nintendo, and most of their employees probably thought they were already owned by Nintendo. But now, the latest one brings up a lot of questions as to what exactly Nintendo is going to be doing over the next decade or so. We can see this posted up, this on Nintendo Life, for Nintendo's official announcement saying Nintendo has decided to acquire 100% of the outstanding shares, excluding treasury shares of Dynamo Pictures, and make it a wholly owned subsidiary to strengthen the planning and production structure of visual content in the Nintendo group. I guess the big thing people were pointing out that's probably the most relevant to Nintendo that Dynamo Pictures has done with them in collaboration were those Pikmin short movies. I wonder if that was Nintendo kind of testing the market a bit with the idea of using some of their intellectual properties in the way of more like TV or streaming series, but this deal is set to close October 3rd. That date can move around just based on how the process goes, at which point Dynamo Pictures will be known as Nintendo Pictures. If we take a look at Dynamo's website, they do have a lot of credits for different things they've worked on, with CG and motion capture being the biggest things they're pointing out. They do also talk about like VR, for example, but motion capture, from what I've been able to gather, is like their big thing. They've worked on titles like Nier Replicant, Monster Hunter World. I even saw like Lost Odyssey in here, which is interesting. Ninja Gaiden Sigma 2, Persona 5, Monster Hunter Stories. So again, they've worked on a lot of stuff that's been pretty successful overall. Even something as complex, I guess you can say, with the motion capture as Death Stranding. And if you look at the CG, there are a lot of shows and anime and different things they've done there in media. So you kind of add all of that together and we can at least draw, I guess, a couple of conclusions as to why Nintendo decided to go in and just completely buy Dynamo Pictures. The biggest reason I can think of is they want to work to bring more and more of the overall development in-house, and Dynamo Pictures already knows quite a bit around motion capture, which is becoming more and more important as things continue to develop in gaming. I mean, we see things like Breath of the Wild 2 take quite a while to develop, and I'm sure Nintendo's thinking if there's less outsourcing involved, maybe it won't take as long, and of course they'll have more control around the development of these different games. And there's also the idea that, yeah, Dynamo Pictures could work on another series for them that maybe is a bit bigger in scope, not just like the Pikmin shorts, but maybe they want to take a series like, we'll just say Metroid as an example, and do some big collaboration with Amazon for their Prime Video service, Netflix, so on there, and create an entire series and have Dynamo Pictures help out with it. So to me, it's another thing that just works to bolster their overall development internally, and rather than go out and buy more and more intellectual properties, Nintendo is just working to develop the process for even getting to some of their dormant intellectual properties now. They don't need to bring more in, they still need to work on getting to current ones. So I'm curious how this will play out with Dynamo Pictures. It's probably going to be couple of years before we see anything materialize from this deal, but seems like something Nintendo's setting themselves up over the next decade plus with. Next up, let's talk about PlayStation Stars. This appears to be a new rewards system or loyalty program that they have set up for PlayStation, and it just seems to build on top of the overall trophy or achievement system that they incorporated back with like the PlayStation 3. Well, we can see this posted up. This over on PlayStation blog saying, I'm pleased to reveal PlayStation Stars, a brand new loyalty program that celebrates you, the player, for being on this ever-growing gaming journey with us. PlayStation Stars will be free to join when it launches later this year. Once you become a member, you'll earn rewards by completing a variety of campaigns and activities. Our monthly check-in campaign simply requires you to play any game to receive a reward, while other campaigns require you to win tournaments, earn specific trophies, or even be the first player to platinum a blockbuster title in your local time zone. Now that one is kind of interesting to me, the race to a platinum trophy, because there are a lot of people who will review these games ahead of time. So is there a timer that basically starts once the game is out? Could they set themselves up if they have the game early to get the platinum right as like midnight strikes so they leave one trophy open? There are some stipulations and fine details they probably have to work out there. They also mentioned that you can earn things for like purchases on the PlayStation Store to kind of build up your wallet through like these achievements. They did something similar to this before. It was like an invite-only thing, and maybe they were using it to gather data for this program, PlayStation Stars, but then they mentioned something that seemed to cause some concern online, at least for a brief moment there. That has to do with digital collectibles. They say we are unveiling a new type of reward called digital collectibles. Collectibles are as diverse as our portfolio of products and franchises. They are digital representations of things that PlayStation fans enjoy, including figurines of beloved and iconic characters from games and other forms of entertainment, as well as cherished devices that tap into Sony's history of innovation. There will always be a new collectible to earn, an ultra-rare collectible to strive for, or something surprising to collect just for fun. And obviously the internet heard digital collectible and they thought, well, Sony's jumping into NFTs. They were very quick to respond to that and say, no, these are not NFTs or non-fungible tokens. We are not doing any of that. This is just something fun that if you earn a platinum trophy in God of War, we'll say, you get a little digital collectible or a little statue that's just Kratos. Just something like that. It's just tied to your account. You can show it off. Who knows? Maybe if PlayStation Home 2 happens with PSVR 2, you can put them on a shelf in your little home and people can come and see them and stuff like that, right? I mean, I like the idea of this because it just builds on top of the trophy system that's kind of just been there since the PS3. They haven't really done too much more with that. This just seems like them working to evolve it further. I am curious how they'll handle certain things when it comes to the race for the platinum, but I mean, I like the idea of them doing these digital collectibles, these little statues, and I'm kind of picturing it like Astro's Playroom. If you've played that, you go through the levels, you pick up these artifacts, and then when you go to the room, they're all just kind of sitting there all nice and laid out. You can kind of play around with them a little bit. You can eject a disc from the PS3. That's kind of what I'm thinking here is you'll have a spot that's like a shelf on your PlayStation dashboard, and you can just view them and maybe, I don't know, hit them or something there, and they'll move around. I mean, they already have a lot of this stuff scanned for Astro's Playroom, so maybe you play through enough PS1 games and you unlock the original PlayStation to kind of just drop on your shelf. Again, a lot of possibilities here. Well, I'll be curious to see how this works when they look to launch it later on in 2022. Next up, let's talk about Assassin's Creed and what Ubisoft seems to have planned here in the short term. Now, this all started with a rumor that we can see. It was posted up over on Reddit, but it is linking towards Twitter. Next Assassin's Creed game is set in Aztecs, and then Jason Schreier came in and said the next Assassin's Creed game is Rift, which is set in Baghdad. And then on top of that, he talks about what the big project is, that being Assassin's Creed Infinity. And the way I've been reading into Assassin's Creed Infinity sounds like it's gonna basically be the ongoing project for Assassin's Creed, like just outright into the future, maybe with some that break off here and there like an Assassin's Creed Rift, which is supposed to be smaller in scope. But Infinity, while that's going to include a bunch of different games, experiences, biomes, whatever you want to call them, heard about the main two and neither of them are Aztec. So looking at this, I would say Assassin's Creed Rift is going to be revealed September 10th. That is when Ubisoft is going to hold their Ubisoft Forward, and they'll announce it potentially for this year. Although, if they're not announcing it until September, there's a chance that Rift doesn't come out until maybe the first half of 2023, but who knows? Maybe they want to get it out there, and then they can move into their big overall project and plan for Assassin's Creed to basically become an ongoing live service compilation of different areas or parts of the world or history just being all under one application that I'm sure would also flow into all the microtransactions, everything else Ubisoft would like to do with the series. So when you see something like Assassin's Creed Rift, may or may not be one of the last typical traditional Assassin's Creed games, and might be worth checking that one out. We'll see when Ubisoft Forward happens later on in September. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about God of War Ragnarok. I'm very excited for this game to launch in November. It will close out the Norse saga, and we're starting to see more and more information get out there as we are working towards its big retail unveiling for the pre-orders and all these different things. Marketing material is getting out there. One part of it does talk about a couple of different modes for the game when it comes to the visual fidelity and the frame rate. We can see this. It was posted up over on Novice Gamer, and they have bullet points here from marketing that was spotted and then posted up. It does mention switch between full 4K resolution at a targeted 30 frames per second or dynamic resolution upscaled to 4K at a targeted 60 FPS. Now, the thing with this is God of War had a performance mode, or God of War 2018, but it was definitely all over the place and very rarely rested at 30 FPS comfortably. And that did kind of make for a more jarring experience at times. So I'm hoping that because this is on the PS4, the PS4 Pro, and then the PS5, this time around we will have a much more locked 60 FPS because that is the mode I'll be playing on. Anything I can do to get above 30 FPS for these newer titles, I'm gonna take. I even lived through all the shimmering that was going on with Horizon Forbidden West before they came in and worked on that with the patch in that performance mode, especially with a game like a God of War, where reaction time is going to be important, especially at those higher difficulties. What I saw with 30 FPS in Horizon Forbidden West, where it felt like I was underwater, I'll stick with the 60 FPS mode. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, how do you feel about achievements and trophies in games? 61% said they're okay. It's fun to unlock them, but I don't go out of my way. 25% said I like them and I try to get every trophy or achievement I can. And then 15% said, I don't care about trophies or achievements at all. I think most of us, like we enjoy a trophy or achievement popping if we did something unexpected, right? Like if you get to the end of a chapter or a level, you kind of expect one to pop. But if you're doing this big battle and something shows up and it's like, oh, congratulations, you wiped out 10 enemies in 5 seconds or something like that, those are fun, right? But I'm not necessarily scrolling through the list and trying to figure out where the last 10 achievements or trophies are hiding out or anything. I did end up getting the Platinum in Ratchet and Clank, and that's because there were 3 trophies left after I beat the game, and one of them was like, turn on the TV in Rivet's Lair, and I was like, oh, I forgot to do that. So it was a pretty easy like 3 to get, and then I was like, here's your Platinum trophy. Great. Hey, maybe I'll get a digital collectible for it. But for the most part, I think it's better to have them in these games than not because it's just a fun thing. I would like to see Nintendo take a shot at it at some point, but I don't want them to show up with just a standard idea. I would like to get Nintendo to get kind of creative and weird with the overall achievement or trophy system if they decide to do it, maybe with their next Switch. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day as you're seeing here. This is from Backer saying, honestly, on one hand, I hope they will still do things like crawling through a wall or something if the game asks for it though, not because of the loading time. Yeah, I don't think there's a problem with them trying to show you how hidden a certain spot is by making you crawl through these really small like small openings in the cave just to get in there, right? The problem was, after doing it 30 times in a game, we were like, okay, obviously you're doing this to cover up a load screen, and it just became kind of tedious after a while to hold forward in the spot where it could just be a cutscene or something, right? So I don't mind them keeping that as long as it works to set up maybe an atmosphere and it's not overdone. Like if it's done 2 or 3 times spread out in a game, sure, I think there is still some value to that. And I'm curious how games will change in general when it comes to the layout with these faster storage devices inside these systems. I do think things like crawling through air ducts or doors that open just a little too slowly will probably be a thing of the past. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here. Today was Nintendo's latest acquisition with Dynamo Pictures. What do you think they'll have them do after the deal closes in October? And then what about PlayStation Stars? Do you like the idea of unlocking digital collectibles based around maybe how long it takes you to get a Platinum? Thanks, guys, for watching. Have a great weekend. I'll see you back here Monday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time for Newswave.